All right, let's jump right into this explainer because today we're unpacking one of the most staggering global crime stories in recent history. Seriously, if you're fascinated by complex systems, global logistics, and, well, high-stakes international operations, you're going to get a lot out of this one. We're breaking down a massive international drug smuggling bust that reads like something straight out of a Hollywood thriller. But the crazy part? The sheer scale of the operation we're about to look at is completely real. We're going to trace the routes, look at the adversaries, and break down the overwhelming law enforcement response that finally brought the whole shebang down. So, 11. Let that sink in for a second. 11. I really want you to process what that number represents here. You know, when we usually hear about contraband seizures on the news, the figures are almost always in pounds or maybe kilograms, right? Like a few dozen kilos is a major headline. But here, an international law enforcement task force seized over 11 tons of cocaine in a single massive bust. The sheer uncompromising scale of this is it's absolutely fascinating. Just try to visualize the physical space you'd need to store 11 tons of cargo. Imagine the heavy machinery you'd need just to move it from point A to point B. This isn't some small, localized smuggling ring. No way. This is industrial-level logistics. We're talking about an astonishing payload that requires vast resources to acquire, hide, and actually transport. So let's look at Section 1, the 11-ton interception. Now, we really have to understand that this incredible 11-ton payload, that's just the visceral starting point of our journey today. I mean, capturing 11 tons of illicit cargo doesn't just happen by accident. It requires infiltrating and disrupting a highly organized machine. So to understand the how, we first need to define the where. And that brings us to the cocaine highway. What is it? Well, it's a major Atlantic drug trafficking route specifically utilized by transnational criminal organizations. We are literally talking about the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean acting as this concealed conveyor belt. By calling it a highway, authorities are really hammering home the organized, systemic, and high-volume nature of this route. It's a well-trodden path across the water, using the cover of those massive maritime distances to hide from authorities. This is exactly where the cat-and-mouse game between global law enforcement and organized crime plays out on a truly epic scale. Because, let's be real, you don't just move 11 tons of illegal narcotics across an ocean highway without being incredibly clever about it. The criminals running this route, they were definitely not amateurs. The authorities explicitly noted that the drugs were transported using highly sophisticated smuggling methods. We're talking about networks that leverage advanced logistics, deep concealment techniques, and a thorough understanding of international maritime protocols just to bypass customs and border patrols. They essentially embed their illicit cargo deep within the legitimate global supply chain. Doing that requires an immense amount of planning, funding, and coordination. It's a highly sophisticated, high-stakes operation designed to evade even the absolute strictest international checks. Which brings us to Section 2, inside the cocaine highway. Okay, so we're going to zoom out from the cargo itself for a second and map out the immense geographical footprint of this illicit network. Because to truly appreciate the magnitude of this bust, you have to understand the sprawling, borderless nature of the organizations that built this highway in the first place. This is where the story kind of shifts from a simple maritime seizure to a massive puzzle of global geopolitics and transnational crime. Latin America, Africa, Europe. Just look at that spread. It brilliantly illustrates the tricontinental scale of these networks. These criminal operations span across entirely different continents, oceans, and legal jurisdictions. The networks operated across Latin America, which is the primary production zone, over to Africa, often used as a strategic transit and staging hub, and finally up into Europe, the highly lucrative destination market. I mean, coordinating an operation across these three vastly different regions requires local fixers, corrupt officials, maritime experts, and financial networks spanning thousands and thousands of miles. It just perfectly highlights how transnational criminal organizations don't care about borders at all. They simply see a global marketplace. This is exactly what law enforcement is up against. It's literally a multinational corporation of crime. All right, let's move to Section 3, a historic global takedown. So if you're facing a threat that spans 3 continents, uses sophisticated maritime logistics, and moves cargo by the ton, well, a single local police force is simply not going to cut it, right? You need an overwhelming, coordinated international law enforcement response. On one side of this conflict, you have these deeply entrenched transnational criminal organizations, armed with massive funding and all those sophisticated methods we just talked about. But on the other side, you have Europol and law enforcement agencies from multiple countries joining forces. This definitely was not a unilateral action. To break a network that operates without borders, law enforcement had to transcend borders themselves. Europol stepped in and acted as the critical hub,
pooling intelligence, sharing real-time maritime tracking data, and coordinating strike times across entirely different time zones and legal systems. It's a monumental feat of global cooperation, honestly. It proves that the only way to combat a highly organized global network is with an even more organized, unified global alliance.
And the thing is, this wasn't just about seizing the cargo. It was about crippling the infrastructure itself. The coordinated operation successfully disrupted these vast operations and, crucially, arrested numerous suspects linked directly to these transnational networks. Think about it. Taking away 11 tons of cocaine hurts them financially. Absolutely. But arresting the logisticians, the coordinators, and the local operatives across multiple countries, that dismantles the machine itself. By targeting the actual human capital behind the cocaine highway, this multi-nation task force struck a severe, real blow to the operational capability of these networks spanning Europe, Latin America, and Africa.
To really summarize the sheer gravity of what was accomplished here, just listen to this exact assessment from the authorities. They called it, quote, one of the largest maritime anti-drug operations in recent years. And that isn't just media sensationalism, That is the official evaluation from the global law enforcement agencies that actually executed the bust. That quote underlines the historic significance of this maritime victory. It matters to global security because it proves that even the most sophisticated, deeply hidden, multi-continental criminal enterprises can be exposed. They can be dismantled when the international community pools its intelligence and resources. For sure, it's a massive win for global cooperation. But as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought. We know the authorities executed a historic, massive takedown, seizing 11 tons, right? But if 11 tons of illicit cargo were caught on the cocaine highway in just this one operation, how much traffic is still getting through? When criminal logistics are this sophisticated and span this much of the globe, the seizures we see might only represent a tiny fraction of what is actually moving beneath the surface. It's a pretty sobering reminder of the true, ongoing scale of global crime and exactly why the incredible work of these international task forces is far, far from over. Anyway, thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.